Hey everyone, today we're going to go over your third and final line of defense. We've done your first line of defense, which is your skin. Is your skin in your mucous membranes, are they specific or non-specific? Yeah, they don't care what you are. How about your second line of defense? Let's say your first line fails and now you have phagocytes, natural killer cells, your inflammatory response. Is that specific or non-specific? That is specific, not specific. You got me saying it now. That's incorrect. It is non-specific. Does a macrophage or a neutrophil or any sort of phagocyte care what you are? No. So if it doesn't care what you are, is it specific or non-specific? It's non-specific. So let's get this very clear, okay? You have your innate defense. Innate defense means non-specific. Your first line of defense is your skin in your mucous membranes. Your second line of defense are going to be when they're in your body. You have phagocytes, natural killer cells, inflammatory response, and I have a handout for you. I want to give you guys at the end of class just to help you with your inflammatory response. And complement proteins. That is all stuff that they don't care what you are. They don't care. But Lance, in 2000, I call you Lance. Yeah, Lance. I have a Lance in here. I have a kid named Will, and he's also Lance, so it's kind of confusing. Lance, in 2011, when SEAL Team 6 stormed that house in Pakistan, and they were hunting down Osama bin Laden, and they were going through the house, they found him, and they killed him. Were they looking for any random person? No, they were looking for a target. You watch Star Wars a lot? You ever see Star Wars? You ever heard of the Mandalorian? You know, he's a bounty hunter. Remember his first job at the beginning of the show, the very first episode, he says, I can bring you in cold or I can bring you in warm. Now, there's a lot of people in that little bar. Was he looking for anybody? No, he's looking for one specific target. That is specific defense, and that's what we're going to talk about today. This is going to be your adaptive defense. It is also called specific. When the front office calls and I ask Ben to answer the phone, the people in the front office don't say, hello, could you please send any student to the front office? They're going to be signed out. No. They'll say, can you please send Olivia B to the front office? She is being signed out. That is pretty specific. Your adaptive defense targets specific invaders that have entered your body. This is your third line of defense. And it is your final line of defense. These are your Navy SEALs. These are your US Marines. This is your SWAT team. These are your Mandalorian bounty hunters. These include B cells and T cells. And that's what we're going to get to today. These are the trained killers of your body. When you're a little baby, you really don't have much of this. These things are pretty not great. So let's talk a little bit about some of the basics of this branch of your immune system. Another name, it's called adaptive defense. It's called specific defense. Another name for it is also going to be acquired. It's something that you develop and that you keep. For those of you that actually got COVID, you did not have a defense for COVID before you got COVID, unless you got vaccinated. But let's just pretend this is 15 months ago. There was no vaccine for COVID yet. You either got it or you didn't. Now, if you got COVID and you survived, you acquired an immunity for it. You survived it. If you did not have COVID yet, You did not acquire an immunity. You can't acquire an immunity for something that you've never been exposed to. Will has never been exposed to Ebola. It's a nasty, nasty virus. This typically in Africa. So he doesn't have an acquired immunity for it. It's not there. If he got Ebola, he's in trouble. We don't have a vaccine for it. So it's also called acquired immunity. Now, unfortunately, it is slow to act. When I got my flu shot back in November, it takes about 2 weeks for your body to develop antibodies. When you got your COVID vaccine, it takes about 2 weeks to develop antibodies. A booster is different, but when it comes to initially receiving a vaccine or being exposed to an illness, it generally takes about 14 days for you to develop a resistance for it. That's why people that got COVID, but they had the vaccine, they were showing signs overall that their symptoms were pretty mild. Or on the other hand, if you go to Tampa General, right over here, the majority of people that were in the intensive care unit with COVID were unvaccinated because their body's like, the heck is this? There was no way to defend against it. So it's slower to act. And those people that did survive COVID, they eventually came around, but the first few days, maybe a week, it was tough. Your acquired defense must be exposed to a potential pathogen in order to know that it is a pathogen. So exposure is key. You must be exposed to a potential threat to determine if it is an actual threat. When your body is exposed to, look at this, guys, look at me. I'm rubbing up against this podium. Oh, I love this podium. It's not making me sick. I'm not having an allergic reaction. Everything's fine. Oh, look at my phone. I'm not going to rub my phone. Phone has bacteria. But let's say I'm rubbing my phone. Oh, this is nice. You know, nobody puts their phone in their mouth because it's covered in bacteria. But the point is, your body can differentiate friend from foe. When you eat food and you put that food in your body, unless you have an allergic reaction to like tree nuts or pomegranate, you have an allergic reaction, you're not going to respond to it. And I'll explain allergies on Tuesday. You have to be exposed to something to know if it's friend or foe. And here's what I think is the best part. I'm going to put a star next to this one because this one's really cool. After an acquired defense is formed, that basically means after you've been exposed and you now have a built-in defense for it, you keep a memory of that defense. I got chickenpox when I was 4. I'm going to have the immunity for the rest of my life. Marge, in the video clip we just watched, she was holding Maggie like it was nothing. Apparently, Marge had chickenpox, so she should be fine. In the event that you get a disease and someone comes up to you and coughs that same disease in your face, and it has to be the same disease, you're covered because you've already had it. But there are some diseases out there like the common flu, influenza. It mutates every year. It's highly mutagenic. So a vaccine you may have gotten in 2022 will not work in 2023. It will not work in 2024. It changes every year. And that's what we were experiencing with COVID. You had the alpha variant, then the beta variant, then we got Delta, which was really bad. And then we got the Omicron, which was far more contagious, but people were not getting very sick. A lot of you got COVID back in December and January when Omicron started coming around. It went from like 2% of the population to 90% of all cases were Omicron within a week. It was wild. Much more contagious, but not very harmful. All right, so the 2 tiers of the third line are humoral immunity and cell-mediated immunity. I'm going to do humoral immunity first. Remember, these are the bounty hunters. These are the Navy SEALs. These are the trained assassins of your immune system. They don't play. This is like an all-out war. When you guys hear humors of the body, humors mean fluids. So we're typically talking lymph and blood. The cells that you find within the humoral branch of your third line of defense are called B cells. Their true name is going to be B lymphocytes. The reason they're called B cells is they mature in the bone marrow. They are made and mature in the bone marrow. Made in and mature in bone marrow. Now I'm going to draw one for you. I know you love these little drawings. The following is called a helper B cell. Okay. These little projections coming off of it are called antibodies. You have helper B cells that contain antibodies for anything that you have come in contact with. Now, I'm not going to ask you guys for your own personal medical history, so I don't have no problem providing mine. I'm just going to share with you a few viruses that I've either contracted or that I've been vaccinated against. Now, I'm going to tell you, I have antibodies for all of these. I've been exposed to things like chickenpox. I got that when I was a kid. I've had the measles vaccine, so I never actually got measles. I had the mumps vaccine. I had the rubella vaccine, and I contracted COVID-19. And I've also probably gotten the flu. Let's say I got influenza. I'm just going to make up a year. Let's say 1997. I was in 6th grade. So I have antibodies for all of this. And the helper B cells are kind of like a keychain. If you look at this key, this is my influenza 1997 key. This is my measles, mumps, and rubella key. This is my COVID-19 key. You have these for your whole life, and they're stored on these B cells. So in the event that I ever get exposed to what I have been exposed before, what my B cells will do is make copies and copies and copies and copies of themselves. And then I have an army of antibodies to fight off that virus or bacteria or whatever that I have been exposed to before. So the way this works, let's just say hypothetically, I got COVID in July 2021. Let's say this is COVID-19, right there. And it is now December 2021, 6 months later. I do have an antibody for this. This virus is gonna come over here. Hold on, it's not cooperating. There we go. It's gonna come over here and it is going to interact with that helper B cell. That will activate the B cell. And what the B cell will then do is it is gonna make more and more and more and more. And I can do this all day. I'm not going to do this all day, but it's going to make a bunch more B cells. And these B cells are going to produce those little Y-shaped proteins we did back when we did the blood. And these are called antibodies. I have antibodies for COVID-19. If you've had COVID-19 or if you've been vaccinated, you have them too. And what this is going to do, Will and Lauren, is it is going to find a virus that is swimming around in your body. It is going to surround it like this. When a virus is like this, it cannot go into your cells. The way that a virus actually infects you and gets you sick is it infects your cells. It goes inside. If it's surrounded with antibodies, it cannot go inside. It's going to bounce off a wall or a cell, just like a basketball bounces off a wall. And now that it cannot go inside, it is going to be food for these giant eaters. Do you remember what these are called? Macrophages. The macrophage is going to come over and gobble it up one by one by one. So people can test positive for COVID, but it may not have infected their cells. It can actually be in their system. Their immune system is fighting it off. Now, if you have been vaccinated or you have had COVID, you have these antibodies. But let's say that you have not been vaccinated, you have not had been infected. This is not going to be a part of the picture. This virus will be able to enter your cells and it will be able to infect you. How you respond to it has been very diverse. There have been doctors who have said they have never seen a disease with such a broad spectrum of symptoms like COVID. Some people have absolutely no symptoms. Some people have a stuffy nose. I had like a horrible fever for one day and everything else was like a cold. Some people are still in the hospital after 6 months. Everybody's different. All right. Now, what if you come in contact with the disease that you have never had before? If you survive, you will eventually produce antibodies and you will produce memory cells. Memory cells are going to keep a record of the antibodies for a specific disease, theoretically, for your whole life. Yeah. Yeah. So if you got chickenpox when you were 4, you should have a defense for it when you're 74. Yeah.
So but if you've never had it, so then you don't have like any antibodies.
Yes, that follows.
How does that make sense that you are like asymptomatic?
You have the 2 other levels of your defense, like your macrophages, your second line of defense. It might be keeping it under control. And it's been shown that people that are in healthier physical shape had a better response to it. Not everybody will. There are people that could have been Olympic athletes and they're in the hospital. Everybody's different. But overall, you look at all the data, the majority of people that fell very ill for COVID were obese, out of shape, not well conditioned. There were people like yourself, you're a well-conditioned young man, you could have gone to the hospital too, but the data shows that there are people like that. But for the most part, the greater majority of people that got sick and even died of COVID were not in good health before. They might have had other diseases going on. They're called comorbidities. Like my dad has a heart condition. My dad is 77 and he smokes. He was very nervous to get COVID. You don't want, when you smoked your whole life, you don't want to get a new virus that attacks your respiratory system. That's not good. So he really tried to make sure he didn't put himself in a position to get infected. But also he's in good shape. So it'll be hard to tell. But yeah, doctors have never seen a virus like COVID-19 where it was such a wide range of symptoms. There are people that got brain damage. There's people that had pneumonia. There's people that had nothing. I mean, I'm sure some of you lost your sense of smell. That's weird. I did. So who knows? All right. Now for the other one. These are, this is cell-mediated immunity. These are going to be called T cells. The actual name is called T lymphocytes. They are made in bone marrow but they're stored in the, or excuse me, not stored. I don't mean to say stored. I meant to say matured. They're matured in the thymus. That's how they get their name, T cell. So here is a helper T cell. I'm gonna try to make this look really scary. Carson, are you terrified?
Whoa.
Yeah, good. That is a cytotoxic T cell. These perform what we call cell-to-cell combat. This is when it is an all-out war. Now, a helper T cell can become one of two things. It can become a cytotoxic T cell, which is known as an effector. When you guys hear the word effector, effector with an E, that means fighter. And then it can become a memory cell. And I've already explained to you what a memory cell is. It's where you keep a memory of that defense against that particular disease for the rest of your life. What they do is that they'll go up against a cell and they'll pump it full of poison and kill the cell, which is apoptosis. They contact target cells and basically pump them full of toxins, killing the target. They go around your entire body looking for wherever this target is. And they're out on a seek and destroy mission. They're on a mission. They're not just trying to find random cells. They're looking for something very, very, very specific. Very specific. This is cell-to-cell combat. Antibodies do not destroy cells. I want to make that very clear to you all. Back over here for a minute. Antibodies don't destroy cells. If Will was getting into a fist fight and I'm coming up behind him and I give him a big old bear hug, I'm not going to kill Will. I'm restraining him. That's what antibodies do. They restrain. And let's say I'm going to restrain Will until the resource officer comes and takes him away. That's what antibodies do. They don't kill things. Antibodies restrain pathogens so that your other immune defenses can take care of the dirty work, like the macrophage come in and just eat it up. Cytotoxic T cells do kill cells. All right. Now, one last thing I want to get to, we're just about done, is I want to talk about a little bit about vaccines, and I don't want to take too much of my thunder from Tuesday, but right now I want to talk about HIV. Yes, Julia. Yeah. Let you guys catch up for a minute. I want to talk, while she's catching up, I want to talk to you guys about the human immunodeficiency virus. Now, HIV is a virus that emerged in, I think, the 70s and 80s. It was very unknown in the 80s. Have you ever seen the movie Straight Outta Compton? What did Eazy-E die of? AIDS. Have you ever seen Bohemian Rhapsody with the band Queen? What did Freddie Mercury die of? AIDS. I remember being in 6th grade and there were a couple guys that came to school and they were talking to us about AIDS. I'm like, I'm 12 years old. I don't know why I'm getting this talk, but okay. Well, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about HIV and why am I going to bring up that disease when I'm talking about your T cells? HIV, and this is, yeah, this will be on the T cell side. HIV stands for human immunodeficiency virus. Don't ever let me hear you say human. No, I'm thinking of something else. Human immunodeficiency virus. That's fine. I'm thinking of AIDS. Some kids don't know what AIDS stands for. This virus emerged in the 80s in Forrest Gump. Y'all ever seen Forrest Gump? What did Jenna die of? AIDS. She did all the drug use and probably a lot of unprotected sex in the 60s during her hippie days. And she said, Forrest, I'm sick. They don't know what's wrong with me. She had AIDS. That took place in the 80s. Well, the way that HIV works is that it targets your helper T cells. It targets them. COVID-19 targets your respiratory cells. Viral encephalitis attacks your brain cells. Tetanus attacks your muscle cells, although it's a bacteria. HIV targets your immune system. It gets your immune system. And here's the thing, guys. Your helper T cells, they control your innate defenses. They control the activation of your B cells. And they control the activation of your cytotoxic T cells. So have you ever heard the expression, the best way to kill a snake is to cut off its head? You remember in the Avengers, Thanos says you should have gone for the head. That's how you kill it. The head of your immune system are your helper T cells. And what happens if they are eliminated? You cannot activate any other part of your immune system. Yeah. Yeah, because it's destroying the part, it's destroying, here's the thing. You said you don't make antibodies for it. Let me tell you what happens. What's that?
I went to the nurse.
You went to the nurse?
Yeah.
Okay, how'd you go there without a pass? So Jacob says, well, don't you just make antibodies for, here's the thing, Jacob. What part of this diagram I have right here makes antibodies? The what? The B cells do. That's absolutely right. The B cells make antibodies. But what if I told you that HIV destroys the thing that activates the B cells? All right. So HIV infects your helper T cells. So if there are no more helper T cells, that means there's no more phagocytes. There's no more B cells. There's no more effector T cells. Your immune system's gone. And people don't die of AIDS. They die of diseases that their immune system would have normally been able to fight. Eazy-E died of pneumonia. You should easily be able to fight off pneumonia. AIDS stands for acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. I've heard a lot of kids call it autoimmune deficiency. No, you don't even know what autoimmune is. You'll get that on Tuesday. You got the A, you got the I, you got the D, you got the S. AIDS. AIDS is not necessarily a disease. It's more of a lack of an immune system. Cancer patients have AIDS. When they are getting cancer treatment and they are getting so much chemotherapy and radiotherapy that their immune system is shot, it's gone because they're just having so much treatment and drugs and just horribleness, their immune system's gone. They have AIDS. So AIDS isn't just caused by a virus. It can be caused by multiple things. But you die of something that you normally would have been able to fight off. You could die of a cold. You don't have a way to fight it because you have no more immune system. And so I told you guys before COVID was around and people wore masks all the time, you would every now and then see people in our society wearing a mask. It was likely because they were a donor of a tissue or an organ. And in order for their own body to not reject that organ, they have to be on immunosuppressive drugs. They need to take an actual pill that weakens their immune system so that it doesn't reject their organ. The good news is they'll have a longer life. Their organ will help them live longer. The downside is they cannot risk getting sick because they have a very weak immune system to try to keep their immune system from destroying their donated tissue. All right. One other thing I want to get to, just briefly want to talk about vaccines. You don't just have to get you don't have to get infected with a disease to develop antibodies. You can also get a vaccine. So I want to go over here real fast on the left column. And I just briefly want to talk about vaccines. We're going to talk more about it next class. But what a vaccine does is it delivers a weakened or non-viable, I'm going to put dead in parentheses. Remember I told you how I feel about calling a virus dead. How can it be dead if it's not alive? So I'm just going to say non-viable, but I mean dead, form of a virus to the body. So basically what you are doing is you are being exposed to a disease without being diseased. If I wanted Mason to study a tarantula, I can kill the tarantula and then lay it in front of him and he can study it, analyze it, learn all about it. You don't have to get a defense from an active virus. Vaccines are where you deliver a non-functional part of a virus for your immune system to learn what it is without actually getting sick. And so there's actually a graph. You don't need to write this graph. I want to show you. Let's say degree of illness is the y-axis. Your first exposure to a disease, if you don't get the vaccine, this is your first exposure. Look at the degree of illness. It's really high. And then later in life, you get that same disease again. Your degree of illness is much, much, much lower. This is without a vaccine. Why was your first exposure so much worse than your second exposure? You didn't have antibodies. Your body's like, what the heck is this? Now that's when you have no vaccine. How about this now? First, second, this is with the vaccine. Your first exposure, that was your vaccination. Your second exposure, you got it from like your friend's birthday party. Meanwhile, here, you got this exposure at a B-Day party. And you got this second exposure at school, you know, just making up scenarios. But your first exposure when you get vaccinated is your vaccination. If you don't get vaccinated, your first exposure is actually out in the wild being exposed to something that's not good. Your second and your third and your fourth encounter should be nothing. You won't even know you're sick, hopefully. All right, I'm going to stop there.